Hey everyone, it is your horsefly in the boardroom, and welcome to another episode of The Buzz, where today we are going to talk about bosses and what's up with them. If you are new to my channel, I post a new one of these every week, so make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. So with that, let's dive right into it. Bosses, what is up with them? My lead-in on some of my social media was really about bosses and why do they seem so self-serving, so pompous, so over the top, and am I alone in thinking that? And the answer is no, you are not alone, that there's actually been a lot of research done, of course, about leaders and what makes a good leader. And surprisingly, what they came down to was the fact that there are a lot of leaders out there that fit the category of a narcissist. So what do I mean by narcissists? Well, narcissists are characterized by grandiosity, so that's that over-the-top personality. Entitlement, they feel like they're owed things. Need for admiration. They really want people to like them and admire them, and they have a very low mark for empathy. So they don't empathize with others very well. So that's what a narcissist is. And when they looked at it, they said, you know what, there are more narcissists in leader positions than there are narcissists in the general population. So why would that be true? And first of all, let me back up just a second. Are there studies that prove that to be true, that there are more narcissists? And yes, there are actually quite a few studies out there. Ohio State conducted a famous experimental and field study where it said, yeah, in leadership positions, more narcissists than you might expect. Harvard also looked specifically at CEOs and executives and found that narcissistic traits among that population was 3 times more prevalent than in the general population. So it's not just you're not imagining it, it really is a thing. And why does that seem to be the case? Well, it's because narcissists have a tendency to score well in the things that we would typically look to for defining what makes a good leader. Or in other words, they bubble up towards the top. And it really starts with hiring, because looking at the research, it says that narcissism actually aids people in emerging into those leadership roles. Why? Well, primarily because they are extroverts, they're very charismatic. But interestingly, then when they looked at, okay, so narcissists get into leadership, does narcissist actually tie to their performance? And the answer that it does not. Although moderate narcissism may help in the sense that they can, given the right context, be the ones that provide dynamic vision and get people moving in the right direction. The problem is it's not usually very sustained. So, yeah, all the things that we would typically look for in what we think makes a good leader, narcissists excel in those things, and so they find themselves in those leadership positions. But again, go back to the definition of a narcissist. They are not very empathetic. They are entitled. They are self-focused. Those sorts of things typically don't last in terms of a lasting effect in the business. So then, what would we have to do different? Are there any practical steps that we could do to help weed out narcissists in the hiring process? And one thing that could be very helpful is incorporating validated tools to help screen for narcissism. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to eliminate them altogether, but it would be really helpful, would it not, to understand if you're dealing with somebody who scores higher on narcissistic tendencies. One of the tools is what's called the Narcissism Interview Scale for Employment, NISE. That would help you understand if you're dealing with a narcissist. There are also some other tools out there that focus not just on narcissism, but what they call the dark triad. And that sounds very doom and gloom, does it not, the dark triad? But it's looking at narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Believe it or not, those three things have a tendency to clump together. So there are some assessments out there that focus on those things. I'll leave that to you to go look at those. But there is something called, for example, dark triad, dirty dozen. But that would be another tool that you could use. The other thing that would be helpful in the screening, hiring process is looking to see if they have complementary traits, something that might actually help counterbalance the narcissism. So things like high conscientiousness, emotional stability, cognitive ability, things that might offset some of those potential downsides. The other interesting thing about narcissists, when you look at the research, let's say, for example, it's too late, we've hired somebody, they're demonstrating some of those narcissistic tendencies that would be negative impact on the organization. So are there things that we can do in that case? Are there interventions that we can make to help offset that? Unfortunately, there really is not a lot of research out there that validates whether there are interventions that work or not. Overall, the research would say that effectiveness for what they have looked at, effectiveness is modest at best to try to get a core trait change. They found that mitigation is actually more achievable through behavioral or structural approaches, or in other words, rather than trying to fix the behavior or the personality, can we do things around the person to help mitigate that? The research says you're probably more likely to be effective that way. If you look at things like, what do we typically go to? It's things like executive coaching. Does executive coaching work? It shows that it's typically not, because narcissistic people are resistant to that sort of intervention. They have a tendency to want to avoid it. And quite frankly, they panic when it comes time for self-reflection. They don't believe the things that they hear. So coaching is not actually very effective, and deep personality change to begin with is very rare. And so coaching often manages the symptoms rather than actually transforms the individual. So there you have it. You're not alone. There are a lot of narcissists out there. Now, that being said, they're not all bad. Sometimes having a narcissist, like I had said earlier, where they can, using their charisma, they can put a new vision out there, get people excited about that. Having narcissists in those sorts of roles are not necessarily a bad thing. You just have to understand that it's probably not going to last for a long time, and you're going to have to manage around that. But it is possible to do. So if you are the one that is sitting at your job thinking, man, is it just me, or is my boss self-important and a little pompous, and they don't have any empathy for me? Yeah, you're probably not wrong in that. So hopefully you found this interesting and helpful. Again, if you haven't subscribed, feel free to subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you next time.